So I think from the last few years, we created a new tradition of not only inviting entrepreneurs that are on their second or third or fourth mission, but entrepreneurs that are really, really young and inspiring. And so this year, we approached Aaron, and Aaron agreed to be here. So thank you, Aaron.
Sure, thank you.
So Aaron, before sort of talking about business and all that, let me kind of spend a little time, maybe the audience want to know who you really are.
Yes, I agree with that. So just to clarify, I do not have a computer science degree. So just in case there was any question of that in the room, that is not what I come with. That's because I was too busy getting a PhD and MBA at the same time. So that was a joke. But I actually dropped out of college, so I really can't ever claim that I have any kind of degree without lying. But so background is my three co-founders and myself, we all grew up in Seattle. So any Seattle people here? Woo! Okay, you probably all worked for Microsoft at one point then? Is that accurate? So we grew up in Seattle, and anybody who's from Seattle knows that it's a Microsoft-led kind of just like entire state. I think it even bleeds into Oregon a little bit. But when you grow up in Seattle, it's great because you have this technology all around you, and it's super inspiring because you just you grow up with computers, and there's a lot of computers, and certainly all Windows computers, and so it was a great place growing up. Learned a lot about technology. Figured this was a pretty extreme passion, and then ultimately we went on to go start Box in 2005. So we've been doing this for quite some time.
So a couple of questions. You are probably one of the few co-founders that we hear. In fact, most of your other co-founders are also not, computer science majors or engineering majors.
Well, the other two actually, yes. So our VP of technology, who we grew up with, was a computer science major, and then the guy who runs our infrastructure, I forget what his major was, but he, growing up, it was cool. He was like 14 years old and had an IT services business, and so got really into infrastructure at a very early age.
So there are a lot of young entrepreneurs here who probably don't have a degree in computer science, and so what's kind of your lesson to them if they want to go on an entrepreneurial track? What does it take? Can they really do it, or just odds stacked against them in Silicon Valley?
You better have some really good friends that can help you. So I would say you want to befriend anybody you can on the technology side. So there's a lot obviously that you have to go do to build a technology company, and certainly there's a lot of depth of expertise that you need, and so you want to surround yourself with that as much as possible, and otherwise it gets very, very difficult to manage it and scale it.
So you're saying that if you don't have an engineering background, make sure that your roommate happens to have a computer science background.
It's somebody you know very closely better. So, not necessarily a degree, but certainly a lot of depth and domain expertise.
So, we have had a lot of folks, I think one very famous person today whose company went public, and everybody's talking about Harvard dropouts, and I guess you're starting a new trend of West Coast dropouts now, or? Yeah,
we wanted West Coast representation for the dropout community. So I dropped out of USC. We actually had the East Coast covered. My co-founder dropped out of Duke. So we wanted to really make sure we were destroying both coasts in terms of college education. But yeah, so the Facebook IPO, maybe just like a quick golf clap for that one. So okay, that was a quick golf clap. Okay, but yeah, incredibly exciting times for Silicon Valley, for the internet, for dropouts, for lots of stuff.
So talking about dropouts, I think a lot of parents here are getting jitters, about their kids coming to them and saying, "Okay, I'm ready to drop out."
Yeah.
So what was the reaction when you told your parents that you were going to do that?
Jitters, I guess.
So how'd you handle that?
Well, we were really lucky. So when we started the company, we started out of our dorm room, and we it was 2005. So does everybody remember the internet in 2005? it was sort of like this deserted, barren landscape, right? There was sort of like, there's Google and there's Yahoo and sort of AOL, and then there's nothing else. And so we started the company at a time when there just wasn't a lot of stuff going on, so it wasn't really clear what we would kind of turn this into and where we would grow it. And so we spent the entire summer focused on Box full time, and we spent the whole time working on it. We got really lucky because we actually had emailed Mark Cuban. And he actually decided to invest in the company. So we were just in college, and Mark Cuban invested in the company, and that was a pretty good indication that, you know, it's possible that if Mark Cuban, my parents could, and my co-founder's parents could conceive of a world where Mark Cuban knew something more than them about this situation, and so they decided to trust that as enough credibility to let us go do it. But, you know, they were pretty scared.
So I think most people can only see Mark Cuban on Shark Tank. So
yes.
How did you get a chance to reach him?
Well, actually, has anybody here ever emailed Mark Cuban? No. Oh, we got one hand. Did he reply? He did? That's exactly right. So that is 100% consistent with every time I do that survey. So
what's his email address?
It's like mark@hd.net or something, or mark@dallasmavericks.com. I forget which one did you email? Yeah, okay. Well, Mark is amazing. I don't know how he does it. I don't know if he has like 5 clones that like go and respond in the exact same kind of like eccentric manner as he would, but like somehow he answers any email that he's seemingly like somehow like you have to cross this threshold. I don't know what it is. I don't know the rubric or the algorithm, but like somehow we just emailed him and he responded, and he decided that he liked the space and kind of what we were doing, and ultimately decided to invest. So that was pretty exciting.
So, I mean, people say that email is about, you know, you be short, precise. What did you say in your email that really had?
I probably sent him an essay or something. I don't remember, but it was. So we didn't actually email him to invest. So remember, back in 2005. We didn't have, TechCrunch was just emerging. You had like Gizmodo, you had Engadget, but one of the biggest blogs on the internet was Blog Maverick. Like, it was actually one of the more trafficked websites and blogs. So we actually wanted Mark to just mention Box, and we just wanted him to evangelize it or tell people about it. And we didn't even know that he was investing in startups. And then ultimately he responded and said he'd be interested in investing. So that was pretty exciting.
Usually, you know, a lot of times when you get at least experience of people of Mark Cuban on Shark Tank is that, you know, they take 50% of the company. I'm sure that's not what your experience was. So, you know, what was that experience of dealing with him?
Rounding error, but yeah, what? Sorry?
What was your experience of dealing with him the first time?
It was good. I mean, remember, this was not in the times where, you know, you were seeing $50 million pre-money, you know, Series A valuations. So, you know, it was like an 2005 kind of investment climate. We did sell a good chunk to him. Actually, interesting story. We ended up buying it back about a year later when we did our Series A, but that can be for a different story, or when people have more alcohol or something. So,
we can arrange for that.
Sure, totally. Just give me a microphone and alcohol, and we'll tell the story. So,
okay, after this,
yeah,
we'll go to the alcohol party. So, you know, you go into somebody like Mark or other people, and, you know, you coming out of college where you really didn't have a whole lot of experience. So were you asked this question, hey, are you going to hire a CEO, or can we depend on you to be the CEO?
Actually, yeah. Surprisingly, we were asked that quite a bit. You know, when we were initially raising financing, and I was 20 years old, my co-founder was 19. My co-founder looked like a small child, so and he was our CFO. So it looked like we were going to take the proceeds and run to Disneyland, and so I think that worried some investors, and particularly in Seattle. So remember the people that were from Seattle. So Seattle sort of lags Silicon Valley by about 5 years in internet markets. So they still thought we were in a bubble. Like, they thought the bubble was like crashing still. So it was like 2005, and they were like, holy shit, pets.com. So when we showed up trying to raise money in Seattle, it didn't work really well because they just weren't prepared for like the founder dropout story, you know, as Silicon Valley has sort of almost always been. And so ultimately we had to go down to the Bay Area, and so we dropped out of college, moved to Berkeley and then Palo Alto, and then we raised from DFJ, and certainly in that process we had to think about like what is the eventual evolution of the company, the management team, the organization, and I think more out of more out of probably just blind confidence. I just thought I could do it, and it worked for a while, and things kind of, because when you're 5 or 10 people, there's not a lot of issues that you run into, but certainly by the time we got to 20, 30, 40 people, there's a lot of process changes, there were a lot of things going on in the organization. People were asking me questions that like, I just didn't even know how to answer, like, what are the HR benefits? I was like, I can't even help you with that. So ultimately we decided that there were a lot of things more strategic than that question that we wanted help with management around, and we brought in actually a chief operating officer to come help us build out the organization, build out the executive team, build out the just entire organization.
So this is your equivalent of Sheryl Sandberg?
It is like Sheryl Sandberg with a beard. So it is our COO.
So, Tim Draper is actually going to be one of the keynotes tomorrow morning.
Oh, perfect, great.
And so tell us what your experience was with Tim, having gone to raise money from him. Why do you think they decided to put money in your company? What was the stage when you went there?
Yeah, well, so to be fair, most of my interaction has been with our board member Josh Stein, not with Tim, but certainly interact with Tim a couple times. And the thesis of DFJ, the thesis of Tim, and that has cascaded down to other other directors and partners at DFJ, is they want to invest in very disruptive, disruptive in the classic sense. So taking on a market that has a higher cost or inferior solutions and finding disruptive businesses or business models to go attack that. So Skype and Hotmail, these kinds of businesses. And so I think we sort of appealed to that nature of the thesis, which was a lot of businesses, enterprises, and small and medium businesses have spent way too much money on their enterprise infrastructure. And we had a cloud solution that could go do that much more cheaply. It could be used by consumers, it could be used by enterprises, and ultimately I think they got attracted to that. And they like to make big bets on sort of long-term markets, and I think they saw that also as a pretty cheap round, so that might have helped.
So talking about, you said your solution could be used for consumer SMBs as well as large corporations.
Yes, at the time.
At that time. So where did you end up focusing on? I mean, people here in the room have some ideas, but we'd like to hear from you. Where? Yeah.
In 2005, the thesis of the company was that you would, like, every place that you could store or share data was going to move to the cloud. We were not going to have any physical media that we wanted to store information on. We didn't need physical infrastructure, and we'd be able to manage and share our data, over the web, and using the efficiency of kind of the servers that we could have. This was actually before Amazon Web Services, so we built out a competency in managing infrastructure, putting together storage, putting together different servers. We actually, in Berkeley, really funny story. So anybody know the Berkeley area? Probably. Okay, like Ashby Avenue, like this thin street that kind of goes up and down Berkeley, and we were living out of the garage of my uncle's place, and we were 4 guys and just living out of garage. So you can just imagine how disgusting that was, and we were going to build out of we're going to go expand out of a local data center in Emeryville, and we bought a lot of infrastructure. We bought a lot of storage servers from Isilon, and somebody got the address wrong or something, so they ended up delivering the servers to our Berkeley address, not the data center. And so there was a gigantic semi-truck on like Ashby Avenue trying to unload like these Isilon servers, like with all of the cranes, and I mean not cranes, but
you can't fit anything there.
It was, yeah, exactly. So there's nothing to do that. So that just gives you like now you could just go write a piece of software, use Amazon, but like back in the day we had to be we had to go build out this stuff. And so what was the question?
Never mind. Let's talk about a different question. So who is your target customer today?
So, that was the question. Right. So here's what happened. So what we realized, we built all this infrastructure, we let anybody use the service. You could sign up as a consumer, as a professional, as an enterprise. It was 2005, and then it was 2006, and over the next year we sort of started to see some different things emerging, right? So this was at a point in time where you started to first get the rumors of G Drive. So back in 2006 was when that started to happen. Apple had MobileMe, and it was very clear that they were going to evolve that product, and it certainly wasn't clear that it would go as far as iCloud, but like we thought it was going to be a pretty transformative product. There was this product out of Microsoft called Live Mesh. It was going to be sort of Ray Ozzy's big bet at Microsoft, and we thought that was going to be very disruptive because it would give away like 2 gigabytes of free space. And so we looked at the consumer landscape and we said, the challenge in the consumer space is So there's Moore's law, which makes obviously efficiency of computing, improve dramatically. But then there's also this thing, Kreider's law, that is more related to storage. And storage costs go down every 18 to 24 months by about half or so. And so you could just draw out the line where eventually you will have infinite space in the cloud that is pretty nominal to pay for. And so big companies like a Google or a Microsoft or an Apple could effectively subsidize that. Whether that's with their operating system revenue, whether that's with their search advertising revenue, whether that's with different software revenue or hardware revenue. And so we did the math and realized that in the consumer space, where you only value like your access to information across your devices, and the major technology players were going to value kind of locking in an ecosystem, that they're going to fund that for consumers, basically to the point where as a startup it'd be very, very hard to stay competitive. But then when we looked at enterprises and we looked at the $290 billion spent every year in enterprise software, and the fact that much of that is going to shift to the cloud over the next 5 to 10 years, we sort of saw this weird sort of this weird situation where we could then shift all of our focus, all of our engineering, all of our R&D on the enterprise market, go after this space where people want to manage their information in the cloud. They're going to value a very different set of things: security, integration, our platform, mobility, and we could go build for the enterprise where they would value that. And so ultimately in 2007 we wrote up a little Jared McGuire memo, and we decided to pivot the company to the enterprise.
So, I mean, enterprise space, most people think, it's kind of counterintuitive for startups because you need a boatload of money. Enterprises don't seem to buy from smaller companies that easily. Mm-hmm. So how has your experience been? What made you do that transition and still believe that that's the right thing to do? Yeah, so what we saw is, we saw that the market for enterprise the market in general with technology is bifurcated. You have consumer companies and enterprise companies. And the consumer companies focus on ease of use and usability and user experience and freemium and all of the good qualities that let users go in and get their own applications. The enterprise companies, for all intents and purposes, had focused on deep, very customized, very deep, very complicated workflows and things that you'd have to integrate into the enterprise, and things that really only like the CIO would really care about. And so what we found was there was this sort of gap where there was no company that was kind of putting the two worlds together, like where they were managing both disciplines. Let's focus on ease of use and usability, but also enterprise security and integration. They do conflict in a lot of ways, and that just means we spend a lot more time trying to get everything right, and we spend a lot more time perfecting the design, the user experience. And so ultimately, I think we built up a balance that was able to manage that. Just out of curiosity, so raise your hand if you've ever had to use SharePoint. Okay, keep your hand up if you enjoyed that experience. Okay, one or two people, Microsoft employees. So what we saw was that a lot of enterprise technology was complex. It was very costly. It was deep in the enterprise, and people were bringing in their own solutions, and they were bringing in the consumer solutions. And so we wanted to find a way to balance I was just kidding. I like Microsoft too, and I really do. So we actually are partnered with them on a number of pretty awesome projects, but with SharePoint in particular, we do think that there can be an easier experience. And so what we saw was that there was no reason that you had, it wasn't a contradiction to say we want easy but also secure software. We want great user experience, but it's integrated into the enterprise, and that's what we ultimately focus on. But dealing with enterprise is the issue that I've noticed in my career, and a lot of people have tweeted that question as well, that a lot of the requirements of enterprises are such that the feature creep starts to emerge after a while.
Yep.
So that's how you get a SharePoint in the end.
Right.
So how do you avoid that feature creep? I mean, what kind of discipline do you have? Because there is always a $10 million customer who is going to tell you to do something. So how do you avoid that?
We like those customers.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know.
We're already tempted.
I know. Damn it! We already did it. There's a couple things. One is, it's actually pretty amazing. This was not possible 5 years ago. It is remarkable how many CIOs are now caring about the end user experience of the products they're implementing in the enterprise. We hear it from the CIOs of the most conservative organizations to the most regulated organizations to even the most innovative organizations. And pretty much unanimously, people agree that they want software that's going to be easier to use, and they're starting to get around the idea that a lot of the things that we built up to make enterprise technology much more secure and much more integrated in the enterprise actually did the opposite. Because what happened was we built up all of this infrastructure to manage our content or manage our data or manage our information, and we locked it all down. And we said, if you want to get access to that, you have to go through all these steps and all these workflows or all these processes. And what we found was when you actually lift open the hood of an organization, they're not then using those tools. They've gone around those systems. They then are sharing on different platforms. They're using different technologies than the ones that were implemented. And so ultimately, you spent all of this money implementing stuff that nobody used, and now there's a better chance to do that. And so it takes a bit of evangelism and education and a little bit more thoughtfulness around what kind of technology to implement. But ultimately, what we found is that people are just a lot more thoughtful and I think forward-thinking about the consequences of when you build software that isn't simple, that doesn't work for the end user. And we do run into these conflicts, a tremendous amount of times. There's a lot of businesses and organizations that either aren't ready for that, or we just haven't built up the right technology to help them solve this problem in their way. And so some things we try and build as platform components, so we don't have to be the ones that are customizing that. So either partners or different applications they can use to go solve those deep problems. In other ways, we just try and make it as simple as possible for that to be hidden from the end user. So as much that you can do to abstract the complexity from the end user experience is a great thing to do to make that dead simple.
So there are a lot of entrepreneurs sitting here who are thinking about doing companies in the enterprise space, and they have to answer this question of giants coming in their space and them trying to defend that turf all the time. And I'm sure in your board meetings that's a very common. As soon as probably Google Drive got announced, I'm sure you were getting calls from your board members saying, "Hey, what the hell are you going to do, Aaron, now?"
Yeah, I was calling them to say, "What the hell do I do?" So,
thank God you have some senior management there.
Yeah, no, exactly. In our space, if you think about what we do, we store and manage information, and at the end of the day, that's sort of what all of us do in some way. So if CRM is information and ERP is information, it's just more structured than the content that goes to Box. And so there's going to be a lot of different ways this ecosystem plays out, and a lot of big companies like IBM and Oracle and EMC and these players are going to have to probably enter this space through different moves and in ways that either might be partnering with players in the space or ways that might be more competitive. And so we're very sensitive to that. And as any startup should be, I think the ways that you consistently beat the sort of big incumbent as a startup are you focused on the dimensions that they can't focus on or they can't execute on. So a small example, but I think is representative of startups versus big enterprises. So the first 3 hours after Steve Jobs gave the iPad keynote, we put together a product team to figure out our iPad strategy. And then I don't remember if it was a day or two later or a week later, whenever the SDK came out for the iPad, we literally put engineers on developing for the iPad app. We didn't think twice about it. There wasn't massive meetings. We literally jumped into a room. We said, do we think that Apple is going to do what they did for the iPhone, but now in tablet computing? And we said yes, and we made a strategic bet that they'd be able to do that. And we built the iPad app. And so on day one of the iPad being in market with iTunes apps, we had an app. So you have to focus on the things that are going to be disruptive to the traditional enterprise incumbent. So one is obviously speed. So your speed and agility to get new things to market, right? The other is business model disruption. So one of the benefits that all startups have is we don't have as big of sort of revenue needles that we need to move. If you're an Oracle and you're doing tens of billions of dollars a year in revenue, well, to move that needle, you need to focus on very, very big spaces, and thus you tend to then forget about the small things that are still emerging. Well, it's the small things that are still emerging that tend to be the big opportunities for startups that then go and create those big companies. So a lot of times you can just focus on areas and in markets that nobody else even knows about. And then the final thing is just standard innovator's dilemma, cannibalization that is a huge challenge. So what we said was Microsoft cares too much about the revenue of its software and services business to give away all of this stuff for free at scale. Now, they get into a lot of businesses by giving away their stuff for free, but at scale, we thought that was going to be challenging, and we thought that they wouldn't be able to go after end users as well as we could. And so that's why we decided to be freemium, was we could go be competitive with a traditional enterprise player by giving our software away for free, because they're not going to be able to do that, because that's the only way they're going to make their money. And we'll just make it up by selling to the largest of enterprises that need the deepest amount of security, the best integration into the enterprise, and then for everybody else, they'll be able to help us grow.
It's kind of interesting because most of the freemium model people tend to associate with the consumer products.
Yes.
So you guys seem to innovate a little bit of the freemium model towards enterprise. So what's kind of been your experience? What is it that the other entrepreneurs that are sort of looking at that space, what can they learn from it?
So I'm a huge fan of freemium in the enterprise. I think it's one gap in enterprise business models that still fully isn't exploited. The one challenge is obviously if your total addressable market for your enterprise product is maybe 1,000 or 2,000 companies, it's really hard to do freemium because you got to monetize effectively everyone in your TAM to make it work. But if you have a horizontal tool, if you have something that's going to be useful by hundreds of thousands of businesses or users or millions of businesses or users, then if you just think about the economics, like you want to get to as many of those as possible and you want to create as little friction as possible. And so what we did was we said, what if you could actually, so the standard business model of a freemium consumer business is you give a little bit away, so that way you can upsell the people that are on the kind of 5 to 10% of the bell curve. And so you want to push as many people up that curve as possible. In enterprise freemium, you actually don't even have to give a little bit of away, because it tends to be a different dimension in which people want to buy the service on. So we actually give a lot away for free users. But when an enterprise, either enterprises that care a lot about security, or again, that integration depth, so they want LDAP or SSO, the things that end users don't care about, but the things that the enterprise really does care about, we make all of that in the enterprise product. And so it's great because then you can have these sort of two poles where you're monetizing the deep enterprise on one side, and you're making users as successful as possible on the other side without having them run into a lot of limits. And so we basically tried to make that the kind of parallel business model. And so anybody that has a market that they can see hundreds of thousands or more users as the total addressable market, freemium tends to work pretty well.
So in the consumer business, we sort of seen the model of between 1 to 2% conversion from freemium to real paid customers. Is that similar in the enterprise business, or is it better?
So I can't share the numbers, unfortunately, but I can say that business is good.
How good?
Better than 1 to 2%.
Okay. And is the business good enough to go IPO?
All right, this is weird innuendo at this point. So, I'm just saying business in terms of like the methodology of freemium in the enterprise is it works, and I think there's a bunch of examples now of it working. Yammer does it. I think Sicily, which became Desk.com, was doing it. I've pushed on a lot of these guys to try and do it as well. But I think it works. And the great news is that you can always optimize this stuff. So you can test out. Like the other thing that is completely undiscovered and unexploited about enterprise software today is the fact that we can build just like the consumers guys build, where you release often, you update your website, you A/B test, you do lots of things with variable testing, multivariate testing, and you get to learn what the behaviors are and what you can optimize for and what you need to change to maximize the user experience, but also maximize how people are using the product and in their business.
So that's kind of a novel concept for the enterprise product to do A/B testing and kind of learn from the customer before putting the product out. I know that was very common in the consumer products. So is that something you see kind of happening in the future in all enterprise products?
Yeah, I mean, it was a consequence of the paradigm that it didn't happen much. I mean, you can't A/B test, client server as easily as you can just web delivered, SaaS software, right? Like you'd have to ship the A/B test to your customers and be like, just run this thing, see what happens. Like that wouldn't work very well. And with the cloud, right? We're going to do this thing in a week where we have a lot of we want to implement a new header on our website, a new interactive header, and in the application, not on the marketing site. And we have some there's like two camps in the product team. One camp thinks it's revolutionary and going to change the user experience. The other camp is a little skeptical and doesn't know that it's going to work as well. So what we're going to do is try it on 5% of people and just see what happens. And if it doesn't work, then 95% of the users never knew it happened, and we'll turn it off for the other 5%. But versus, and we'll do that in a couple-week period. But the way that an on-premise standard 3-year shipping kind of cycle software company company has to go do is like, they can't make those kinds of decisions. They have to do focus groups, and they have to do these very kind of biased tests of what people think and what they like, and we can go test it live on our user base in a very safe and controlled setting.
So, you know, a lot of times, you know, people are, there are things that you've done in the past that you think, you know, if you had a chance to go change, or things that you regret having done.
That's like every
a lot
morning.
of people can learn from.
Yeah. Okay.
What would those be?
I mean, there's a bunch of things. Usually they have to do with speed. So things that I wanted to do faster, a decision I wanted to make faster, a decision on a technology paradigm we should have made faster, a hire that we should have made faster, a fire that we should have made faster. I mean, I would say that, you know, if you think about what is your differentiation as a startup, it's your agility, it's your nimbleness, it's your speed, and to not constantly be exploiting that and capitalizing on that is creating a weakness. You know, for your advantage, and so I try and keep a running list of things that are like still question mark areas, just so we can knock them off. Like, we made the decision, we're all moving on, and let's go do it. And you want as few of those things lingering in a startup as possible. You want to be spending as much of your time competing in the external environment in the marketplace, executing in the external market as much as possible, and as little time focused on the internal, you know, decisions and operational processes and problems as possible. And so, so a lot of the things that we do is just around a lot of my own personal things that I wish we could have done is just, you know, speed things up. So, you know, when we decided to go enterprise in 07, I wish that was day 3 in 05. So like let's go do that. So
let me switch gears a little bit and, you know, talk about sort of management styles. And there are a lot of management styles, and, you know, I've read a couple of things which say, you know, you were a micromanager in a lot of ways. And
who said that?
Some of the press people seem to indicate that.
That person's gone. Kidding.
So what kind of a management style do you think work in a startup, like where you said agility is what matters the most? So what is it, that culture that you set up, that will actually make that agility work better?
Can I tell you my aspirational answer?
You can give me your aspirational as well as your real answer.
The real one's not as interesting. No, I mean, it's interesting. So I would say that you have to know what areas you're adding value and what areas you're not adding value. What areas can be delegated, what areas can't be delegated. What areas can be delegated, but you want still checkpoints for that delegation. And I basically have an imbalance on all 3 of those, but we're working on it. And the idea is, in a perfectly humming organization, you only pay attention to the things that matter most. You create as much leverage as possible for yourself and for the other people that you're working with. You leverage the talents and experiences and intelligence of everybody around you as much as possible. And we actually do a really good job of that. And the only difference is that one of the benefits of the position of you know, founding a company is that you get a purview that you can then use as an advantage, because I get to see a lot of the things that are going on in the marketplace and different customers and at the end user level and at the enterprise level, so you can help the organization sort of navigate through those kind of things in a way that's hard to delegate. So a lot of my time is spent on the product, is spent on the platform, is spent on trying to figure out that strategy and how it sort of is interwoven with everything that we're trying to do. And as much as possible, you want to set incredibly hard, large goals that people go and execute on. And you just want to be a resource and as not annoying as possible in the process of everybody else going out and doing those, because that's how you're going to get your best execution and your best ideas and the best possible results.
Okay, so there is a question from the audience saying, did you ever learn to code?
Yeah, so in middle school and high school, I was a bit of an internet troll. And so built up a lot of websites with friends, and so actually the co-founder or the third employee of the company, my neighbor growing up in middle school and high school, we built a bunch of online different software things and whatnot. But the deep back-end stuff never was an area that I just am too impatient to go into like the long kind of things that people have to do. So I immediately stopped, even trying to learn that area and focus more on the end user experience, the design, the product.
So when did you kind of first know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or you wanted to start a company?
I guess I didn't necessarily think about it like that as much as it seemed like the only path that made sense. Just going out and doing your own thing, just seemed like it was always the exciting thing to do. Not to mention, I don't think anybody would ever hire me, so that helped make it more obvious.
When was that aha moment for you where you said, yeah, this is exactly what I have to do? Like, I should drop everything, including USC and whatever else. What was that moment? What was it like?
I think we got to a point where we would be in class and there'd be like an accounting professor, like doing like these like T-charts of like balance, like I forget what it is, deposits and credits or something. I don't remember. And that's probably why I left it. But I remember just like looking up at the whiteboard, and he was talking, and then like a customer was emailing me, and like I was doing a support thing, and it was just way more exhilarating, like working with customers and developing a product and making decisions around that than it was forgetting about accounting. So that's what we ultimately decided to do. And so that was at some point in like the fall of 2005. It was just far more exciting.
So did you give some shares to that accounting professor for helping you make that call?
I don't want to make him feel bad. So.
Okay. So there is another question from the audience here in terms of talking about that. You seem to have the benefit of 2 internships, which supposedly helped you think about through the idea. At least that's what Wikipedia says.
Okay.
So people want to know, what are you doing in terms of part box playing, in terms of encouraging young entrepreneurs or young people to sort of get involved with the internship and be part of the organization?
Yeah, so Peter Thiel has this thing, the Teal Fellowship or whatever, where it's like he pays people to drop out of college and go and do their own thing, and I don't know if you guys have heard about it. It's super disruptive to the people who are in the Teal Fellowship, and anybody get that? Okay, so the thing is that I actually would encourage people to go join a startup, go work for a year or two, learn the world. Like a lot of the mistakes that we had was that I had never really been in a growth company before, and so it was all trial by fire and learning a lot of things, and it worked out pretty well, and we got very lucky. But a lot of things could have gone a different direction, and so for any college student right now doing lots of internships in tech and even joining a tech company, maybe it's 5, 10, 50 people like out of college. Just like the great thing about the technology industry is that every 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, there's such a massive change that there will always be another sort of cycle, and there will always be another revolution. And so what I think the best way to do it is while you're in college, start a lot of stuff. See if anything clicks. See if you find something that you're really passionate about, because you basically have 4 years where all of your friends are just partying and doing nothing, and where you can be going and building something. And so during college, go do a lot of that. And then if that doesn't work and nothing clicks, go join a company, go get a lot of experience, and then from there try and meet great people that you can go build something up with. And that seems to be a pretty good way to do it. It certainly worked for the Instagram guy.